It's a matter of survival now, isn't it?
It sure is. You said the key word, survival. The ones that are doing very well are the ones that are giving good service, and their back end, and what I mean by their back end, their service, their parts, and their body shop are doing very well for the department.
Motoring 93 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas, your under-the-car specialists for imports and domestics.
You've got your economy car, your family car, your luxury car, and then you take this big step up to Mr. Exotica. And what you are looking at here is the Lamborghini Diablo, the fastest production car in the world. Now this is on show here and for sale here at the Auto Exotica show in Toronto. The price tag, $325,000 plus tax. Now all these cars here on this show, like most car shows, are for sale. And you know, when it comes to buying and selling cars, let's face it, it is not a pleasant experience. Most consumers are already mad at the sales staff when they walk in the showrooms. This probably began back in the old days when we only had the big three to choose from, and showrooms became pressure cookers. Well, the art of selling cars changed in the 90s. Is it a more pleasant experience? Well, that's the subject of our first story. Although car sales have been sliding in Canada for the past 4 or 5 years, the number of dealerships remains at around 4,000. That spells fierce competition as dealers try and lure customers into their showrooms. This is the Automotive Satellite Television Network. It's beamed from Texas into about 7,000 car dealerships across North America. Its aim to teach sales staff what to do once they get the customers into the showroom.
We talk a lot in
Well, what we do is provide live daily broadcast direct to dealerships via satellite. We actually go to the dealership and install a satellite dish on their roof and then beam programming in on a daily basis. The purpose is to provide training for virtually everyone in the dealership.
Okay. Good afternoon, my This is Jim. How can I help you?
Yes, we're looking for a Camry.
Who am I speaking to?
This is Bill.
Bill?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bill. And how do you spell your last name?
Preston, Preston.
T-O-N. All right, Bill. When would be a good time for you to come in?
Well, I don't know. I'm just shopping around right now. How much are they?
Well, Bill, to give you a price right on the phone, I don't know for sure.
But it's this kind of behavior that has turned consumers off and bred a mistrust of car salesmen. This dealership in Toronto has decided to eliminate its sales staff and become what is known as a no-dicker dealership, where the cost advertised is the price of the car, period.
Each car outside is individually priced, and basically the way that we work our pricing on vehicles is as follows: that we take a look at the actual vehicle that we're pricing, and we determine what we feel is a fair market price on the vehicle. Okay, taking into consideration our lower overhead. Due to the fact that we don't have salesmen anymore, and company cars, and the whole 9 yards that goes with employing a sales staff, and we take all that into consideration, and basically that's how we come up with our price. And of course, the consumer is the ultimate test. If the cars are being sold, then that means our price is right. If they're not being sold, that means our price isn't right.
Chrysler Canada has decided to take its cars to the people. 23 Cadillac Fairview malls, including the Toronto Eaton Centre, are now displaying their LH cars to customers whom they hope are already in a buying mode.
We hope that the consumers that see these cars actually keep it in mind that they saw it in a mall, and they saw it in a Cadillac Fairview mall, and that this is a great environment. We have here one of the largest showrooms in Toronto. We only have 3 cars in this showroom. We have other showrooms where these cars are in, and we hope that this is going to be a commonplace environment where you can actually see a car with a mind to buy one. You can't buy a car here. At times there are representatives of Chrysler handing out information or answering questions that the consumer may have, but you'll still have to go to the dealership to sign that purchase order.
Well, I like it because you can come in, as you said, you can walk around, look at the car, and you don't have to go in and have a salesman after you all the time. We've gone through that, and I know what it's like.
I would have had to go to some dealership to see these cars. It's very convenient just to come in here and have a look at them. I've wanted to see these cars. Chrysler makes a lot about how big they are, how wide they are, but they've been building cars for years and years. Why didn't they think of this 10 years ago?
Good afternoon, Joe Sabara.
But still, most cars are still purchased in showrooms with traditional salespersons on hand. And customer reaction, well, it's predictable.
Well, a friend of mine once said that he'd rather go to the dentist than go to a car dealership. I know what he means, actually. I mean, it used to be pretty daunting. It still is pretty daunting. A lot of people still just try and sell you a car. I mean, they're not as interested in what you want or what options you want or the service sector they want to sell you the car, and it's these kind of things that I think are quite difficult, and you'd rather just stay home and do without the car, I guess. But having said that, a lot of them I think are getting better. The no-decker is a good idea because some people want to know what they're paying for the car, and that's their concern, and it takes a lot of pressure, I think, off the consumer. Obviously, some people like to decker, they're looking for a deal, and that's good too, and there's a lot of choice as well. So I think as far as the dealerships go, you have to shop around for one that you feel comfortable with. I mean, if you don't like the dealership, you're not going to buy the car. I think that's the bottom line, probably.
We may see the dentist then.
You might see me at the dentist if this isn't working out, that's right.
You guys had a bad image. What's
The reasoning of the bad image, and I think a lot's got to do with our negotiation and the way we car talk. I mean, we speak one term language that customers can't accept, and I really don't blame them in that point. What we got to try to do here is talk the same language as the customer speaks, and that's got a lot to do with when you go to grocery shopping and so forth. It's a one-set price. That's the price. And none of this back and forth from the manager, see if I can do, will do, and I think the most important thing here is the pressure. The pressure we put towards our customers is that big fear that we create our own image of being bad guys that we really aren't.
You have not been selling cars all your life. Do you remember what it was like to go in and buy a car?
Well, put it this way, I had sent my husband to go out and get me a car because I was very intimidated by the industry, and I did not want to go in, and I felt, me as a woman, here I come, you know, they're going to take advantage of me. And when I came in here, I decided, you know what, I remembered that, and I thought we should change that, and we should let people know that that's not the case.
This is the desk. It's where I work. This is the chair. It's where I sit. My name, the manager. My salesman's name, Cannon, Bill Cannon. I was working a difficult deal. Bill needed this sale badly, but he was getting too involved with the customer. He didn't have a commitment when he walked into my office. I had to keep calm and level-headed. Bill needed my help. I gave him the facts, just the facts. I told him not to give anything away, not just yet. But suddenly something went wrong, terribly wrong. I couldn't believe what I saw. Bill started to give the customer everything he had. It was when he gave the shirt off his back that I knew for certain my desk system wasn't working.
We're back at Auto Exotica, although I guess there's a fine line between exotic and classic, but this car indeed is a classic, a 69 Dodge Charger, 440 under the hood. It's the RT model. It's been appraised at about $100,000 American, although they tell me you could pick it up for $35,000. Now, we've been talking a lot this week about buying and selling cars in the 90s, so we thought we'd head to the Motoring 93 garage and carry on that conversation with our man under the hood, Bill Gardner. I would think, because of your knowledge of automobiles, everybody thinks that when Bill Gardner goes to purchase a car, it's a piece of cake.
Not really. Most of the vehicles I've bought recently have been clunkers and things like that, but I've had some nice ones over the years, and I wish I still had a few of them. But I'll tell you, there's a lot of shortcomings that you expose in a vehicle after you get comfortable with it for a month or two of driving. You know, you find out these little things that that you never bargained on, and you'd never pick them up on just a quick spin around the block or a 5-minute test drive. You won't pick these things up. So I think the most important thing to do there is to try and talk to some owners of similar vehicles that you meet on the street or in a coffee shop or here or there. You just see people driving that type of vehicle. Most of them are pretty candid and frank about, wanting to, they'll usually really help you out and tell you what their experience is with that vehicle, and they're always going to tell you something that you probably never have thought of,
How important is a test drive, and what's the ideal test drive as far as you're concerned?
Boy, the test drive is probably the most important thing, particularly with a used vehicle. And I think the most important thing about the test drive to remember is to try and do the test drive with as few distractions as possible. In other words, you don't want a salesperson in the passenger seat yapping away when you're trying to listen to key things, making small talk when you're trying to listen to the engine, the transmission, etc., and get a feel for that vehicle. Because things like radios and other people, they tend to distract you. So try and turn off the radio, turn down the fan as low as possible, things like this, so you can actually hear that vehicle and listen. Because you don't need a mechanic's license hanging on the wall to analyze a piece of machinery. A lot of people have a gut feeling for machinery when it's right or wrong. And if you don't have that feeling, that's fine and dandy, but you should take somebody along with you who has a feeling for machinery. And like I said, they don't have to be a licensed mechanic.
Should you buy a new model of an automobile when it's out for the first time, or should you be patient and wait a year?
Well, we always used to lay off a few years because we didn't want to be the proving ground for this manufacturer or that manufacturer. But that's not as important today because we've got CAD/CAM, computer-assisted design, and computer-assisted modeling that helps the designers encounter some of these potential problems before they ever occur. So, vehicles now are better than they've ever been in most respects. So, that's not as important, but still, no question about it, there's going to be some major changes made in any model vehicle when it first comes out. There may be 100 running changes in that first year, little things that they expose. So, if you can wait, probably not a bad idea to lay off a little bit, but not as important as it used to be.
If you buy a used car and the engine is clean as a whistle because it's gone through a detail shop and it's clean, should it be buyer beware, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it makes it very hard for me to read between the lines on a vehicle like that when they've been all preened and cleaned up. Keep in mind that these guys don't want to put any more money in them. They don't want to buy expensive parts. Cleaning is cheap, so they'll clean them, they'll spray them with lacquer and preen them up to look just beautiful. But it makes it hard for me to determine. I mean, we all know that older cars leak a little bit of oil here and there. I mean, that stripe that you see down the middle of every lane on every highway in the country is testimony to that fact. But I want to know if these leaks are minor or major in nature. We can obviously live with the minor ones, we all do. But it makes it very hard for me to read between the lines when they've cleaned them up. It really, you almost have to put that vehicle back on the road for a couple of weeks before you can tell.
I want to buy a used car. What's the best tip you can give me on checking the soundness of that engine?
I got a couple of good ones, Brad, but I'm going to save them for our Midas tip of the week.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
A couple of years ago, we looked at the Saturn Coupe. Last year, we had a Saturn SL1 in our long-term test fleet. This week on Test Drive, we look at the newest Saturn. This is the 1993 station wagon.
A couple of years ago, GM set out to beat the Japanese at their own game. Having sampled a couple of their offerings, it is safe to say that Saturn is not only here to stay, but here to do very well, thank you very much. The item that has impressed me in the past and continues to do so in the wagon tested here is the quality of the fit and finish. Inside, everything has a place that from the driver's perspective is easy to reach. The cruise functions are neatly packaged on the side of the steering wheel hub. All the power items are neatly housed in the center console beside the parking brake. The only quibble being that for some strange reason, Saturn still refused to give the driver a power mirror. Now, I would gladly pay a few extra dollars. The dash is analog and as such is easy to read and interpret. The great sounding radio and the heater controls are also placed such that they fall within easy reach. The The seats are comfortable, allowing the driver to find a good driving position. In the rear you can accommodate 2 people with ease. 3 would be a definite squeeze.
Now, while Saturn get full credit for putting a driver's side airbag in this station wagon, they still haven't done away with these stupid electric seat belts. Now, while I realize it's going to take some re-engineering of the B-pillar to put in a civilized seat belt, it should have been done for this year. Now, rumor has it that they're going to change the system in 1994. As far as I'm concerned, 1994 can't come quickly enough.
The story of the wagon, though, is one of versatility. Either or both halves of the rear seat can be folded down. When both are down, you reveal a nice wide flat floor capable of carrying plenty of junk.
One thing Saturn forgot to do was to put a remote tailgate release in this vehicle. Now picture this scenario. You've got to drop a passenger off who's got some luggage in the back. You've got to take the key out, wait for that stupid seat belt to do its thing, get it all the way back here, release the tailgate just so they can get their parcels out. Now the point is, on a day like this, it's not a very nice chore. However, in freezing rain, that's the type of thing I really don't want to get involved in. They really need a remote tailgate release.
Under the hood is a state-of-the-art 1.9-litre 16-valve twin-cam engine that produces 125 horses and 121 pounds-feet of torque. This level of power equates to very good performance figures, allowing 0 to 100k times of just under 9 seconds. Perhaps the best part, though, is the fact that the engine produces 119 of the 121 pounds-feet of torque at just 2,800 RPM. Now this gives you lots of low-end pull. Matched with this engine is a smooth-shifting 5-speed manual transmission. Throw in a nice light progressive clutch and you have a car that is very easy to drive, especially around town. The wagon uses a fully independent suspension setup that provides a very good mix between ride comfort and handling capability. During the pile-on test, the car tracked a clean, precise line, with both body roll and understeer being kept to a minimum. I must admit to being very surprised at the overall level of competency the Saturn wagon displayed. Out on the road, the whole setup absorbs most road irregularities in stride, providing a very high degree of comfort. Indeed, long hours behind the wheel would not be at all unpleasant. During the brake test, we required just 114 feet to stop from 80k. The only comment here being that if you do go with the Saturn wagon, take the anti-lock brake option. Our test vehicle did not feature this highly desirable item. Having said that, the pedal is easily modulated, making it very easy to find the threshold.
Now, despite my criticisms about not having a remote tailgate release and this stupid electric seatbelt, this car is really a very nice automobile. Now, I know if I were a Saturn dealer, I'd be very excited about getting this thing on the showroom floor.
This is a 1959 Cadillac, which was a factory stretch. It was stretched 18 inches by Cadillac at that time. And how it came to be was a gentleman who wanted to rent this vehicle out. He was looking for a stretch limousine. Basically gave me a call, said, come take a look at this vehicle. I didn't know what it was, but quite surprised, it was a 59 Cadillac sitting out in the field. It was black originally, a bit of rust here and there, and a few cobwebs, and towed it down to the shop and went from there. He basically left it up to us to decide what to do to it, and he said what he wanted it for was a party vehicle. So that's what we did.
What have you got now?
Well, it's got a wraparound seat. It's an 8-passenger. We stretched it an additional 60 inches, so it becomes a 78-inch stretch. It's got a light show which goes with the music, a 380-watt sound system, air conditioning, heat, full bar. It's just a beautiful car inside. It's the only one like it in North America that I know of.
What was it worth in the field, and what's it worth now, you think?
In the field, it's probably worth about $3,000 or $4,000. Now it's over $100,000 easily.
Motoring 93 now has a limited supply of high-quality sweatshirts, t-shirts, and baseball caps. For more information or to order, just call this toll-free number.
As promised earlier, our Midas tip of the week concerns what to look for in the engine bay of a used car. They're all going to look kind of shaky and cruddy. This one's got a lot of rust on the air filter area and a little film of oil around the rocker covers. And that's not uncommon with a seasoned car. If you find it's all being cleaned up, maybe somebody's trying to mask a problem. I'd rather see it with a little bit of this crud. But what you want to check is the key thing to do is remove the oil fill cap with the engine shut off and stick your finger as far as you can down inside that valve cover and wipe the sides, the inside of the cover, and see what you come up with. Now, if your finger just comes up with a slight oily film like that, that's a good sign. The car's had regular oil and filter changes and it hasn't been used for short trips. Now, if your finger comes up with a lot of shale and actual solids on there, if you can actually scrape up some debris inside that cover, you know that the oil and filter haven't been changed regularly and or the car's been used for very short trips, which is severely shortens the life of that engine. So make sure you check inside that valve cover. You can't always tell by the oil in the dipstick. That's your Midas tip of the week.
While enjoying my morning coffee, I like to go over some of the stacks and stacks of letters we get here at Motoring 93, and I've got a doozy for you next on Kenzie's Corner.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
You know, Rompin' Ronnie Hawkins was probably the best known export from Arkansas until this Bill Clinton guy came along. And Ronnie made a lot of money as a rock and roll performer in Canada. He decided he was going to buy himself a Rolls Royce. So he wandered into the then local dealer, and he was dressed the way Ronnie dresses, and he was talking the way Ronnie talks, and the sales rep said, "Sir, we don't sell cars to people like you," and threw him out in his ear. Well, Ronnie didn't cotton to that kind of hospitality very much. He went home and he got the cash price of a Rolls Royce in small bills, brown paper bag, walks back into the dealership, dumps it on the sales rep's desk and says, "I'll take that white convertible." Now, Gordon Lightfoot wrote a song about it, maybe you've heard it. Now, I was reminded of that story by a letter I got from a viewer. This gentleman has had a Dodge Aspen for 300,000 miles. You got to say he's a dedicated Chrysler owner. He's probably had the car longer than any other Aspen owner in the history. He wanted to look at a new Eagle Vision, one of the new Chrysler LH cars. So he drove his beat-up old Dodge into a local dealership. He was dressed in his comfortable track pants and had his grotty running shoes on, but he had $10,000 cash down payment and was ready to finance another 20 grand. But the sales rep took one look at his kind of crummy clothes and his beat-up car and said, "Well, I'm sorry, sir, the only demonstrator we've got, the sales manager has it, and he's at lunch at 2:30 in the afternoon." So the viewer said, "Well, can I get a brochure?" And the sales rep said, "Well, I'm sorry, we've only got very few of them and we have to sort of hold on." In other words, get lost. Well, here's this poor customer, wants to stay in the Chrysler family, and the guy's treating him like a bag of dirt. Now, I know you sales reps out there say the first page of the sales manual says you've got to qualify your customers, make sure he's a valid prospect before you waste any time on him. Listen, the way the car business has been the last few years, anybody who can get himself into your dealership under his own power and is still breathing is a gilt-edged prospect, particularly you Chrysler guys who were supposed to take in all this new niceness training. Now, I know you've got a hot product out there, but you can't afford to turn off any customers. Remember the Ronnie Hawkins story. You see some guy who's dressed like a bum, or worse still, dressed like me, maybe he needs a shave. He might be the guy who's going to buy a $30,000 car from you. Don't you forget it. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Now here's a car that'll bring back a few memories, at least for guys my age. It's a 1963 Ford Falcon Ventura. The price tag here at Auto Exotica, $6,000, certified or best offer. Well, that's it for this week. Now, next week, make sure you tune in because we have a special edition of Motoring 93 coming your way. We're going to have a roundtable discussion featuring some men and women who do have an opinion. And we're going to be hearing their opinion on driving in the 90s. What's good about it and what's frustrating about it. That's next week on Motoring 93 as we bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
Motoring 93 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil. And Midas, your under-the-car specialists for imports and domestics.